Andy Adamski said, "I will never forget that as long as I live. This was the big brother who babysat me, who put me up on the handlebars of his bicycle and rode me all over town. I loved him and I looked up to him so much." Andy Adamski hates Halloween and everything that goes with it. He hates it because any thoughts of fun and frolic take him back to that night when his brother James was beaten to death in a horrific crime that remains unsolved to this day. Now, James was 10 years older than Andy the night that it happened, so Andy was 8. And this is what we know. In the early morning hours of October 31st, 1982, James left the crowded Halloween costume party. It was one of those you drop $10 and you can drink all night sort of events for most of the night, and he'd had a few drinks before he left the bar with a girl. On foot, they started walking south on Transit Road. He was last seen walking alone on Transit Road near Broadway around 3:30 in the morning. When James didn't come home the next morning, his mother knew that something was very wrong, because this was very uncharacteristic behavior of him. And Andy recalls, he was very respectful of her parents, he said. He would never, ever have stayed away all night without telling them. Lancaster Town Police, assisted by volunteer firefighters, spent weeks looking for James without any luck. And then, on December 26th, 1982, 4 miles from where James was last seen, a couple of rabbit hunters found his body. He was under leaves and twigs in a wooded area west of Ransom Road. He was right near the railroad tracks. They're kind of in a pretty wooded area. He was still wearing his Halloween costume, and he had been beaten to death with some kind of blunt instrument. He had numerous wounds from blows to his forehead. He was found about 4 miles from where he was last seen alive. My dog is itching. Sorry. The grave was off Ransom Road in an undeveloped area where there was literally nothing but those train tracks. Today, it's part of what's called Heritage Trail Bike Path. There was a man, a police chief, and he described it as, this whole area was straight, no curves at the time, and the brush and trees were right up to the edges where no one could walk or drive. And it was just over here that they found the body, in this little bit of a depression. There was actually a depression that went, about maybe 100 feet. The killer or killers made an effort to hide James's body. They purposely covered him with twigs and leaves, and the twigs appeared to have been freshly cut off of trees, or broken off of trees. They weren't like dead limbs. The department had the twigs analyzed, but no fingerprints were found. I guess I never thought you could analyze stuff from outside, but that makes sense. They knew it was a secluded spot, and they knew that that was a place that likely no one would ever find James unless they literally stumbled right across him. There are other details about the condition of James's body that the police chief or detective wouldn't say, and I don't know if that's one of those facts that, they keep it kind of close to the chest because they don't know. They're investigating it, so that's how they kind of catch people, is when people know details that were not released to the public. I don't know, but he described it as horrific, and as I imagine any death cases, I do think that some of them are worse than others in the scene. So, Fowler said, "This case has more twists and turns than any case I've ever been on. It led us in several distinct directions. Several suspects were interviewed and released, and nearly every lead was ruled out. If this case has twists and turns, I couldn't find them. I could literally find very minimal information." So, dozens of people knew that James was at the party that night, and they were interviewed. And people that James hung out with, his friends, family, of course, everyone was interviewed, but no suspects have emerged in this case. James had no known enemies. Investigators did learn, however, that he did get into an argument at the bar that night with someone, but they said that it was not related to his murder. So, it's unknown that if someone picked up and inebriated James as he staggered down the road on Halloween morning. Police believe that someone picked him up as he walked along Transit Road. They said, "We don't know if someone picked him up like a hitchhiker, if someone invited him into their car, or if they forced him." It was a gruesome crime, and after all these years, we would like to find out who really did it. From all accounts we are aware of, he was a super friendly guy. He was well liked in high school, said Jim Robinson, detective lieutenant at the Lancaster Police Department. The bar where the party was held, as I mentioned before, was called 5 and 23. It was on Transit Road in the village of Depew, just north of Walden. It has been closed for years. Although the police are really frustrated with the lack of evidence, they said that they are determined to continue their investigation. They recently, after 30-some-odd years, sent all the clothing that James was wearing to the laboratory for DNA analysis. But what they really need is someone to come forward and help them with information. Someone out there knows something. We hope that someone reads about it or remembers some little detail that can help. Maybe they were never interviewed and they should have been. Maybe they were too scared to say something way back then, said Robinson. In 2017, the Lancaster Police and Flynn put a spotlight on the case by announcing an $11,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. Flynn was a detective. However, that money has not helped investigators crack the case 3 years later. They said, "Unfortunately, we've only had 2 leads since 2017, and both of them did not really go anywhere. We want the family to know that on no uncertain terms, this case will remain open until we find the person responsible for it," said a man named Gerald Gill, the chief of police at Lancaster Police Department currently. The victim was loved by his family, and you can imagine the family's sadness. This is someone's child who was missed and loved by his family. James's unsolved murder had a profound effect on his family, said Andy. He's now 43 and he works in a warehouse and lives in the Buffalo area. He said the slaying devastated his parents, Bernard and Rosemary, his older brother Larry, and sister Susan. "My brother was such a good person," Andy said. The murder was especially hard on Andy and James's mother, who died in 2005. Bernard Adamski died in 2000. "My mother was never the same person for the rest of her life," Andy said. "She overprotected me after that. For years, she drove me to school. I understand that 1982 was a long time ago, but maybe someone saw something. Maybe you drove by him that night as he was walking down the road, or maybe you're that girl that was walking with him and you saw him get into a car. I couldn't find anything that said that she was ever interviewed, or if they even found out who she was. They must have, I feel like. But I don't know, 3:30 in the morning is a rough time to be leaving a bar drunk at 18 years old. And, there's not a lot of people around at that point in time, even if it was Halloween, to see him get into someone else's car or, something like that. But I find it really hard to believe, after all this time, no one has said anything to anyone. As far as I could tell, he wasn't robbed or, assaulted and anything like that. So they just killed him just to kill him. I have to wonder how they determined that the altercation at the bar wasn't related. Maybe that person was trying to cover something up and just was like, oh yeah, no, we fought over some quarters or something, I don't know, like change in the machine or whatever. But I know that people drinking makes emotions run very high, and I find it very easy that he could have gotten into an altercation with someone. Maybe he flirted with someone's girlfriend. Maybe he accidentally bumped into someone and spilled their drink. Stuff just happens when you're out drinking. And I don't know. I don't have any answers for this one. I think it is very, very strange, and I'm sad that his parents passed away without any resolution to this case. I can't imagine his mother. I mean, you're absolutely right. It would change your whole life for something like that to happen to your child. And then, yeah, she grew completely overprotective of the others, understandably. I can't imagine losing a child, let alone more than one, so I could see why she would become that way. Sad. Anyway, I know that this was a shorter case, but someone out there does know something, and while I don't think that my little channel is going to solve anything, you never can tell. I sometimes hate these unsolved cases because it is just unresolved, and that drives me absolutely crazy.